As Atari fans, you and I are living in a both fascinating and wallet-draining time. As the current leadership works to reclaim Atari's rightful position as a gaming powerhouse, there are more and more ways to play your favorite Atari classics. Here at the end of 2023, not one but two new consoles are vying for our attention: the Atari 2600 Plus and the Atari Gamestation Pro. In this video, I'll try to help you decide which one might be right for you, and we'll do that right after this. This video supported in part by...
Playing VR, I tend to sweat. It gives me an edge. So King of Nerds happens to give me an edge too. Let King of Nerds give you the edge. Bye, King of Nerds.
Hey there, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I'm John and I am a GenXGrownUp. Thank you for clicking on this video. Both the Atari 2600 Plus and the Atari Gamestation Pro are hitting the market within weeks of one another. And at first glance, it would be pretty easy to assume they both do pretty much the same things. But the more I compare them, the more I believe each is really targeted at very different consumers. If you've been eyeing these two new consoles and, like me, can't necessarily afford to just purchase both, I hope this video will be useful. Let me be clear at the outset though, I'm not interested in convincing you to purchase one of these units over the other. I have affiliate links down in the description of this video, and no matter which one you click on, I'll get my 3 cents. Rather, like with all my product videos, I'm looking to help you, the potential buyer, make the best purchasing decision for you. Because everyone's tastes are different, and what you might find vitally important in a console might be trivial to the next person. And as we get started, I should note that the Plus is shipping November 17th, while the Gamestation Pro is shipping October 31st, though some lucky folks have found advanced shipments at big box retailers a few weeks early. And while I've used and reviewed the Gamestation Pro, I haven't yet been able to go hands-on with the Atari 2600 Plus. So the information I share here will be based on what Atari itself has shared about its console. With all that covered, let's get started by comparing the console design. Now, neither console is manufactured by Atari. The Plus hardware is being built by third-party PlayOn for Atari, and the Gamestation Pro is manufactured and distributed by MyArcade under license from Atari. And while the GSP is a plug-and-play console, the Plus is a modern throwback reissue of the original VCS. The Gamestation Pro console is small and sleek, with rings of light around the power and menu buttons. The color scheme of the GSP is much more evocative of the 2600 Junior and the 7800 than it is the VCS. The Plus, on the other hand, is an 80% scale reinterpretation of the good old wood-grain VCS. And while I'd have preferred a 6-switch over a 4, it still looks pretty cool. As for hookups, both are powered via USB and connect to your TV or monitor via HDMI, so no more hunting for RF modulator adapters to play old Atari consoles. Both devices support switchable 16:9 or 4:3 aspect ratios to either fill the screen, but stretch it out a bit, or preserve the original aspect ratio. That's the one that I prefer. On the GSP, this is accomplished via a software switch, while the Plus has a physical slider right on the back of the unit. And speaking of switches, since both heavily feature 2600 games, access to those difficulty and TV type switches are important. The Plus preserves those as hardware switches, just like the VCS, while the GSP provides you with software toggles. The 2600 Plus may have a bit of an edge here, since you must pause your game on the Gamestation Pro to adjust the switches, while the Plus has them right on the unit, like you'd have had with a real VCS. Each company took a different approach to the physical and behavioral design of their respective consoles, but both use software emulation rather than hardware to play these old games. So under the hood, they're more similar than even they might like to admit. Next, I'd like to talk about the controller situation. The Gamestation Pro includes two newly designed wireless controllers, which both feature not only game menu functions, but also a paddle built right in for games that need it. It also has similar LED lighting features as seen on the console to sort of unify the experience. I've had mixed feelings about the GSP controllers. The stick, paddle, and menu buttons are great, but the position of the B and C buttons feel out of place and can make playing some games a bit clumsy. Fortunately, the GSP has support for using your own wired controller via the two USB-C ports on the front of the console, so long as they utilize X input. I've been using an Xbox One controller and it works really well. Buttons might not be in the right place for some games, but if you can find an X input controller with remappable buttons, you're going to be set for life. The The 2600 Plus, on the other hand, opted to stick with tradition and ship with a single controller that's a re-release of the classic CX40 joystick. Plus controllers are wired, so this will likely reduce any latency that wireless controllers may introduce. And you can bring your own controller to the party because it will support legacy VCS controllers that have that 9-pin connector. We'll get to games in a bit, but it's worth mentioning here that while the Plus supports 7800 cartridges, the included controller only has one button, which is one too few for most 7800 titles. I hear rumor that Atari is likely to be selling an add-on 7800 style controller for use with the Plus, but nothing has been announced yet, so you might need to bring your own controller for 7800 games at launch. Next, I'd like to talk about a price comparison, and this is really pretty cut and dry, but worth shining a light on. Both consoles are around $100. The Gamestation Pro's MSRP is $99, and the 2600 Plus is $129. Now that's a 30% price differential, but still right in the same general ballpark. And despite being the more expensive of the two, the Plus has plenty of add-ons available that can really increase the actual cost of ownership. Want another joystick? $25. Want paddles? $40. Now we're looking at nearly $200 invested in the Plus to approximate what you get for half the price with the GSP. Now that sounds like a no-brainer, but if the Gamestation Pro doesn't do what you're looking for, then that extra cost might just be justified for you. Now, if you want something cool for cheap though, look no further than our merch store. Pop on over to GenXGrownUp.com/merch, where you can find awesome graphic tees for just about anything you're into. Atari, retro gaming, TV shows, movies. We've got cool designs for you or that special someone on your upcoming holiday shopping list. Each shirt you buy goes to support independent content creation just like this video, so please take a look at our wares if you have the opportunity. Okay, let's get to the heart of the matter, the games. And this is where the differences between the two consoles really start to become meaningful and dramatic. And I'll start by bottom lining it. The 2600 Plus is for playing physical media, cartridges, while the Gamestation Pro is for playing a curated selection of preloaded games. The Plus has no games built into the unit, but does ship with a 10-in-1 multi-cart featuring some Atari VCS favorites. Beyond those 10 games though, you'll need to bring your own cartridges to the party. In addition to 2600 games though, the Plus will also play 7800 cartridges. Now, even though the Plus plays carts, it's still using software emulation to do so, so there are a few games that may not play properly or at all on the 2600 Plus. Now, to their credit, Atari is running their due diligence and actually testing hundreds of games and publishing their findings. And these findings are that the vast majority, and I mean like 99.5%, will play fine. There's also some question about compatibility with modern homebrew carts using advanced techniques, and Atari has stated via some discussions on the recently acquired Atari Age that they're working on improving that compatibility. I don't want to overblow this, as it's likely that nearly every cart you plug in will work fine, but there is an outside chance of a problem, however slight. The Gamestation Pro, on the other hand, comes loaded with a shade over 200 games, but it will not play your physical cartridges, like at all. There's nowhere to plug it in, so don't even try. However, those 200 games span multiple platforms. Dozens from the 2600, a few from both the 5200 and the 7800, as well as a couple dozen Atari arcade games. Now, you should know that Atari games only make up about 140 of the advertised 200. The remaining 60 or so are labeled bonus games and range from 8 and 16-bit titles, and even some arcade games not released by Atari. For some, this inclusion seems odd, and I get that, but if you're not upset by seeing non-Atari games on the console, you might be pleasantly surprised to know that they're not just shovelware, but actually some pretty decent and playable titles. As I'm sure you can see, these two consoles take a very different approach to delivering gaming experiences. If you have a mountain of old carts and no way to play them, the Plus might be just what you're looking for. On the other hand, if you want a console preloaded with a variety of games from a variety of sources, the GSP is looking pretty good. Finally, I'd like to talk about expandability. What's the potential for each console to do things beyond what comes packed in the box? For the Gamestation Pro, we've got to shine a light on the included SD card slot. I've found that with a bit of online digging and effort, you can actually load your own game ROMs onto the unit and play games they never intended. I'm talking Game Boy, Sega Genesis, Game Gear, NES, and more. Plus, you can load way more games for the featured Atari consoles. And you can even add more arcade games. Yeah, with some extra work, you can play the likes of Donkey Kong and Pac-Man by leveraging that SD card. I did a full video about this expansion process on the Gamestation Pro that I will link down in the description. The 2600 Plus, on the other hand, you could say is infinitely expandable for 2600 and 7800 games, so long as you continue to acquire new cartridges. If you're a fan of collecting physical media, your upgrade path is only restricted by your budget. Now, there's no report of any SD card slot being included on the Plus, and if I had to guess, I'd say Atari has no plans to add one. It would just be counter to the whole vibe of the console. So while you can add all the cartridges you want, you will likely be limited to those 2 Atari platforms games. It's a lot to take in, right? I know, which is exactly why I felt a video of this type was needed. As you can see, it's not a clear-cut one is the best answer. It may not be like comparing apples to oranges, but maybe more like comparing oranges to grapefruit. These 2 consoles share many of the same functions, but each has its pros and cons, and each one does some cool things that the other one does not. I truly hope you found this feature rundown and comparison to be helpful. Had you already made up your mind? Did you see anything in this video that changed your opinion, or maybe something you saw here reinforced a plan you already had? Please let me know down in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious which way you're leaning and what information is pushing you in that direction. Now, I'm going to throw some links over my shoulders here and here to some other Gamestation Pro and 2600 Plus coverage I've done recently. I certainly hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.